What's up, everybody? This is Chris here. Welcome back to my Bloodborne playthrough, lore, everything. Mostly lore, especially this episode is a lot of lore. I'm going to talk about so much stuff in such little time. May even have to talk about some of it in the next episode because I may not get to it all here. So, with that being said, item descriptions that pop up, things that happen may not be equivalent to what I'm talking about in this episode, just because of so much stuff that I got to get through. But there's a lot of stuff that I find. This first part is actually pretty bland on some of the stuff, but then once I reach this next area, which I'm going to say right now is Byrgenwerth, there's a lot of stuff that just happened. Boom, 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 boom. So with that being said, let's get right into it. The first thing I want to talk about is that there's a lot of water ruins in this area. There's the sea ones and the lake ones. I think you find 3 or 4. I think it's like 3 in this area. Plus you find that other one that's in Hemwick, but that doesn't matter. But it's seeming to like foreshadow that something is coming up with water, right? Something to do with the water, the great volumes of water. It just seems like that's what it's trying to foreshadow. Very interesting little tidbit kind of thing I noticed. I was just like, why am I getting all these lake ruins all of a sudden? So it may have to do with that we're going to deal with something with water soon, which at the end of this video seems to be the case. So as you get through this area, you'll be like, oh yeah, that does kind of make sense. The other thing that I meet in this area, which kind of started kicking the gears in my head, are these executioner enemies, and I had to actually look up the name. I don't know if that's a community term for them or if that's the actual name for that monster, but they're the monsters with the capes and the big armor. You see one right at the beginning of the game, and he's pretty tough. He kind of reminds me of what like the Black Knights were in the previous games and things like that. That's what he kind of reminds me of. But he seems to be almost in every area so far in the game. He just seems to exist, and I don't know if that's meaning anything or if it's just trying to show, just trying to give you something difficult to fight to get certain items. That first one doesn't even block anything, it's just there. So sometimes I think the developers just put that guy there and they're like, well, we need one in this area because we need to put one in every area of the game. Let's put it right here to give the new people a shot at something and see if they can take it on. Maybe, right? But I think that them being everywhere in the game kind of maybe signifies something. The biggest thing about them is that they don't look like anything from the time period that we're supposed to be in. I haven't seen anyone look like a knight or anything like that in that kind of armor in this game yet. So that tells me that they might be from a time period before this. I wouldn't say they're from a time period after this because that's kind of weird. So I'm going to say that more than likely they come from a time period before this. The other thing that kind of leads me to that is that if you look at their armor on their chest, they have a big picture of a woman's face on it, which to me, I know FromSoft likes to deal with queens, right? Especially in Dark Souls 2 we had a queen. Well, I guess Dark Souls 1 we had a king. So in Dark Souls 2 we had a queen, and then in its what are they called, DLC, there were queens, so maybe that was just to stick with the queen stuff. But I haven't seen really a woman figure, maybe Vicar Amelia, but the picture on the chest doesn't cover the eyes up, and Vicar Amelia had her eyes covered, if I remember right. So I think if it would have been the Vicar Amelia, they would have covered the eyes up. So I don't know what the picture of that woman is, but it just, to me, that enemy just signifies something that's beforehand. And then we meet the boss of this area, the Shadow of Yharnam, who also appears to be pictures of, or seem to be depicting people from before this era, or from before this time. And we'll talk more about that here in a minute. The other thing about this area is after I got through it and I got to Byrgenwerth, I wanted to find out a little bit more about this area, especially if I missed anything, because I know this area is huge and I didn't want to miss any very important item descriptions, at least in here, especially if I could go get it. I did find out that you can get to the backside of Iosefka's clinic. So, with that being said, I may have to come back through here before I fight the boss that I'm about to fight at the end of this video, just to kind of go backtrack, and not only just backtrack to get to Iosefka's back entrance, which kind of sounds dirty, but also to check out if I'm missing anything else anywhere else in the game before I get to this next part. And the reason why I want to do that is right now the game is really leading me to believe that we're reaching kind of the midpoint climax, the point where the game's going to turn and become very more maybe straightforward, you know, if that makes sense. Like maybe more like, okay, now you're on the path to the end, right? And it's kind of like the midpoint of the game to me. Not necessarily the hitting of the climax, but leading us there to that climax. So everyone likes climaxing. So just know that that's what it feels like. So that's why I want to make sure I go check these areas out before, because once I've reached that point, who knows what's going to happen. It may change things, and I may not be able to do certain stuff. Definitely, when you play video games, try to realize that, or try to fill out that point as best as you can, because it can help you, especially in RPGs where like a climactic event could make it so that you can't reach certain points or certain things. So, and sometimes some games will just throw it at you, and you have no chance really unless you just know where you're playing it through at the second time. So just keep eyes for stuff like that in video games, and I really feel like that's here. So that's why I definitely want to check it out later. One of the big things here, well, not big, it's kind of a small thing, I think, but I think it might mean something, is when you go to the boss at this area, you kind of go down a ramp. But if you go right, you kind of go up a ramp, and it leads to this area that's secluded from the rest of the forest, and it has a really big gravestone in it, like the ones in the forest, but it's just secluded. And it's that gravestone alone. There's some like little gravestones around it, but it's that big gravestone alone. And there's a person kneeling in front of it. Looked like it was bowing to it, but that person's dead. What is this area is really what I'm trying to get at. It is weird that it's placed there. I think there's a reason for it, but what that reason is, I don't know yet. Maybe something I visit later on in the game just to check it out, see if something else can be done. But there's definitely a person kneeling, and not kneeling, but actually bowing in front of it. Why did that person die too is another question. Like all the other dead guys you see, especially on the screen right now, you can see are just laying up against rocks or slumped over. But this one's actually bowing, and it looked like they died during the bow. So did they bow forever and just died of hunger in that position? It doesn't look like anything killed it, is what I'm really trying to get at, or killed the person, killed him or her. It looks like a her, if I remember right. So something I might want to check out or think about and keep in the back of my mind as I go through this. Now, one of the things that we're going to head up to in the boss of this area is called the Shadow of Yharnam. So as I'm fighting the boss, I'm just going to give you the tips now, because like I said, I got a lot to talk about. What's funny is I'm going to talk about all this, and then I'm going to be done, and there's going to be like 50 minutes left of video. I'm like, oh, I guess I should have talked slower. But the Shadow of Yharnam is the boss when you walk into it, and I can see it's not a super hard boss fight. So when you get into it, do not freak out about it. I can see how people who've never played a Souls game could be overwhelming to fight 3 guys at once. But trust me, it's very easy if you just kind of do what I do in this video. It reminds me of the boss fight in Dark Souls 2, where you fight the skeleton wards, or whatever they were called. It's very similar to that fight. So if you remember that fight, just kind of do the same things you did there. The first thing I always do in those fights, and I realized the minute I got in there, was to take out the magic user. 2 reasons. 1, he's probably the one that's going to hit the hardest if he hits you. And 2 is that he usually has the lowest amount of HP. So definitely being able to get rid of one guy just right off the bat is super helpful. Now, as you go through the fight, you got different phases, and what the phases are determined by how they transform. So as you're going through, they evolve, and they grow snakes out of their chest, and you can tell the first phase happens pretty close to the end of the life of the first guy you kill. It might be determined by how much HP. So if you start like whittling down all 3's HP, it may go into phase 1 without anyone being near death. So that's why I really say focus on one guy, because that way you can kill him and you have less to deal with in a harder phase. In that second phase, or in that first phase, or I guess it's the second. The first phase is when they're just all 3 there. Second phase, they have the snakes growing out of their chest. You should be pretty close to killing the magic guy, so just wipe him out when you get that chance. Then after that, you got 2 guys left. You got a guy with fire and a fire sword, and then you got a regular guy with a regular katana. The guy with the regular katana has higher HP, and he's a little bit faster, and he's the one that's going to come after you the most. He was my next choice, mainly because he seemed to be the most dangerous throughout the fight after the magic guy. The other guy with the fire didn't seem to attack much, especially in this fight. I don't know if that was just something that he did in my fight, or if that's something he does on most occasions. He didn't seem to really attack me. So I kind of ignored him, and I kind of just dodged around him, and I really went after the guy with the katana who was kind of coming up after me. In this next phase, they have that they have an ability, or the one with the katana at least has the ability to shoot out like a snake from its chest where the snakes are, and it can hit you up and knock you onto the ground. Just be careful of that. You can dodge it. He has a little bit of a tell to it, but it's a pretty quick move. and it's kind of his range move. So if you stay within like medium to close range to him, maybe just out of range of his weapon, you probably won't see that move. But if you back up a lot, he'll try to throw it at you quite a bit. So just be prepared for that. I don't think he used it actually in the fight where I fight him here at the end of this area. There's two things they don't use. That's one of them. Once I take him out, then it goes into phase 3. But if you take out that katana guy and you leave the fire guy for last, you can actually just run into, like, just keep being super offensive, I guess would be super offensive. Keep going on the attack against the guy with the fire. If you do that, he won't ever enter phase 3. And my other character, after I beat it with this one, my other character, I died like once, or I think I died once or twice, and it was because I let the third phase happen. Once they get into the third phase, it's not that it's impossible. You just got to be very, very, very careful of all the things that can have happened. So in third phase, what should happen is that they kind of evolve a little bit more, and they gain more of their snake powers. And the biggest thing is the guy's able to, like, he kind of puts his hand in the ground and he summons a really big snake, and that big snake can pretty much one-shot you. If you're high enough level, he might take a little more than one shot, but usually if he hit attacks you, then the other guy will come up and attack you, and by then you're pretty much dead. So be very wary of that. But you can prevent all this, like I said, if you stay on the offensive after you kill the second guy. And what ends up happening is, in fact, that the guy with the fire, if you stay on offensive, won't attack you. He'll just keep dancing around like an idiot. And you can kind of finish him off. And that happened to me twice, because it happened to me on this character, and it happened to me on the other character after I came back with, I think, the second time. He just seemed to dance around, and you're just able to keep attacking him. Like I said, as long as you stay on him, you keep attacking him. And I think it's because you catch him in an AI loop where he wants to get away from you to get into phase 3, because he doesn't want to be attacked while he's in phase 3. So if you keep going into him, he keeps trying to run away from you. But because he's not able to dodge very far, at least with this axe, I was able to hit him a couple times as he was trying to run away. But if you keep pressuring him, he keeps trying to run away instead of actually just transforming. That may or may not happen all the time, but the both times that I've tried that tactic, it seemed to work. So take the first guy out is the magic user. Second guy is the strong physical attack, which is the guy with the regular katana. And then the last guy you want to leave is the guy with the candle in his hand. I think it's candle, and he lights his sword on fire in the second phase, so you'll know who he is. And then just keep pressure on him, and you should be able to take out these 3 guys pretty easy. So that's kind of the tactics of that fight. You'll see it as I do it. I do exactly what I say. I said I was going to do, so you'll see what exactly happens. Now, the lore behind Shadow of Yharnam boss fight. There's 3 of them. They're all called Shadow of Yharnam. To me, a shadow, obviously, is like when you stand between a light source and the shadow on the wall. That's a shadow. But in a poetic way, shadow is your, like, could be called like your former self. It could be many things, and so I was like, well, it could mean a lot of things. So let me look up at the actual definition of shadow. Like, I know what a shadow is, right? I talk about it. I mean, I don't talk about it every day, but I use the word like a regular word every day, so I know what it is. But what exactly would it be as a definition? and what's really interesting is you find that one of the definitions for shadow is a vestigial remnant. Now, vestigial, if you look up that word, it could be actually considered like a synonym for shadow. And a vestige is, when you look it up, it has like 4 definitions, and they're actually very interesting because they kind of tie into this game really well, all 4 of them. And to me, I don't know, that doesn't seem like a coincidence to me. It could be me looking into things too deep. You know, that's always the case when I talk about this lore stuff. I do kind of go head first into some of this stuff. Like, I go deep, guys. I go deep. but at the same time, I find little coincidences like this, and it kind of makes me go, I think I know who. I think someone also Googled this shit and wanted to use this as the word for them, because the definition for vestige, I believe this is, I want to say, I don't think it was a Google definition. It was the actual dictionary definition of it. So here we go. So one of them is, it's a mark, trace, or visible evidence of something that is no longer present or in existence. Okay. A surviving evidence or remainder of some condition or practice. Okay. A very slight trace or amount of something. And in biology, it's a degenerate or imperfectly developed organ or structure that has little or no utility, but that in an earlier stage of the individual or in a preceding evolutionary form of the organism, it performed a useful function. when you combine all these definitions, you kind of get what I think the Shadow of Yharnam is. I believe it is something of former age that exists, which to me means that there's a former Yharnam that may exist, and that these people are from that, or these are shadows from it. And they don't really exist anymore because they've either been wiped out, or they died, or something happened. But who knows? Maybe the great ones ended up killing them, or they had a plague themselves, or something like that. Yeah, but there it feels like these are remnants of an old age. So if you look at it, they're a mark or trace of visible evidence of something. So they no longer exist. And that makes sense. That's exactly what I just said they are. And then they're surviving evidence or remainder of some condition or practice. So not only are they evidence of something that used to exist, but they're evidence of something that used to take place. And they're kind of that final form of that, or that final existence of that. There's a very slight trace or amount of something. I like the easy way to explain that is you don't see these guys everywhere. So far, I've only seen these three, so there aren't a lot of them around. And in biology, a degenerate or imperfectly developed organ. So that definition, if you really want an easier way to think about it, is I think that dangles in the back of your throat. Supposedly in biology is that it used to be used for something, or at least back in the day when I took biology, this was the definition for it. I don't know if they found an actual use for it or not, but back in the day, it used to be used for something in one of our previous evolutionary forms. Or even if you don't believe in evolution or whatnot, just go with me, because this is what biology states. Is that that could have been used in our previous evolution for some other form, right? And now that we evolved from that, we don't really need it anymore. So now it's a vestige. It's not useful anymore to us, but at one time it was. So when you take that back to these shadows, that these things were useful, they were useful for something before, but now that evolution has taken place, they aren't needed anymore because a better form has come about. We know that evolution and stuff like that is thought of in this game because of the clockwork and anti-clockwork metamorphosis runes. They talk about evolutionary thing of evolution happening in that with that certain beasts and stuff like that arose. So those things were talked about. They exist. So we know that certain things like that can be defined, and it's very interesting that all these definitions equal like a vestigial remnant. You could call them the vestigial remnants of Yharnam. That's their new boss name. But Shadow of Yharnam is a lot easier to say. So ultimately, they seem to me to be from a Yharnam long ago, and that really ties in, and it kind of gives you evidence that Yharnam is a lot older than it appears, or there was a Yharnam that was a lot older than it appears. Maybe the labyrinths are an old Yharnam, and they built a new Yharnam on top. That's evidence that's happened in history before. So that's something that's happened in real life. Cities have been built upon older cities, especially when one was conquered. So those kind of things do exist, and that's very possible. It's just very, very interesting. And it definitely points out that probably Yharnam existed before Byrgenwerth. Just something to think about as you go through the game. And then I find, after I beat the monster, I find the item sedative. It says as the scholars learn more and more things they shouldn't have, it causes them to go mad. So that's not what it says, actually. It says something completely different. But that's kind of the gist of the item. And that's something that's been seen through the game. As these guys learned more and more about what was going on, they kind of went crazy. And it kind of shows off as you go through the next area that they may have been into things that they weren't supposed to be. And it caused them madness. However, it says the human blood calmed their madness. And frayed nerves is a term for stress and anxiety, and that's part of the description of the item. So if they were able to calm their madness by blood administration, that tells me that blood administration really wasn't maybe created for healing. It just seemed that they found out that it did heal, but in reality it was really created to calm madness and to calm them down from trying to learn this eldritch truth, or trying to learn this truth that's going on. It's very very kind of weird item that kind of states this. And then why are there sedatives? Is that what they use these for? I guess it says it's a special medicine, but it alludes to the fact that it's blood. But I don't think it is blood, because that's what blood vials are. But maybe it is. Maybe it is a special type of blood, or it just says medicine on it. So it's just a little interesting item that kind of shows like how they calm themselves so they wouldn't get mad right away. As you can see on the video right now, this is that big grave site that I was talking about. That just kind of interested me, and there's the person on the ground that kind of died. Just something I'm going to keep in the back of my mind as I kind of go through the game. Also, as the minute you enter Byrgenwerth, one of the first monsters you meet, they kind of throw them at you before you even get to the first lamp. I think they do that because they want to kill you, maybe. I don't know, but it seems that they throw a monster. Basically, looks like a fly, and it depicts and a fly is really known for like having a really special eye, right? It's an eye that's segmented into multiple eyes, basically, or multiple lenses. I think, not necessarily multiple eyes. So. Something to really think about when you go through these next areas is all these different monsters, and to kind of look at their eyes and see what they're really trying to do. What are they trying to prove? Were they metamorphosizing themselves into beings with multiple eyes? And also the other thing is we see a little bit later, there's an item we get that talks about invertebrates, and that most of these things that they turn themselves into with multiple eyes have multiple they're not multiple invertebrates, they have one invertebrate. So I don't know what I'm trying to like read and talk at the same time. So like when they let their madness go and they weren't able to control it, they started using their knowledge of the blood to metamorphosize themselves into things with multiple eyes. That's kind of what I was thinking. Like they kind of went so crazy that they were starting to use like what they knew and how to evolve. Because remember that Metamorphosis ruin kind of talks about that. So they were using it and they were trying to become beings with more eyes, maybe to be able to see more into things. I don't know why they think that. Like to me right now, if I thought about it and I was like, if I could like evolve myself into something, let's say even if I thought that happened, I would just have more eyes to see things. Like I wouldn't be able to see further into something. Like just because I have more eyes, I wouldn't be able to see past like the realm that we're in. But apparently that's what they think. And that really makes me think that more eyes, maybe they needed the eyes to see through this body of water, to see reality. I'm not entirely sure. Like this eye thing is still bugging me because all I can really say is this game is really making eyes seem very special. But I really want to find out like that it didn't work. But I don't know. It keeps like pointing out like these guys thought that's what was gonna happen, but that's not how it works. So, but but this is fantasy. You can't like say that just because it doesn't work in our world. That like because this is fake, that it won't work in theirs too, right? So just gotta keep reminding myself that it's like a fantasy world, and they could make eyeballs do whatever they want, as long as they show that that's what's happening. As long as somewhere is like eyeballs let you see into the different realms or something like that. And I think that may have been mentioned before. It lets you see inside whatever. I don't remember. I have to go look that up. But definitely eyes are very special in this, as much as the moon is. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Like I said, this fly monster made me realize that when you see it, it looks like a fly, but it doesn't have an actual fly. It just has a bunch of eyes on its head. And what's really cool is if you die by it, and then it takes up your souls, all the eyes glow, so you know that it has your souls. Very cool. It's a very creepy looking monster though when you first meet it, and it tries to jump on you and bite you, I guess is really what it's trying to do. I don't think it takes your insight, but ultimately, like, I don't know who these they are definitely part human, so they're a lot like the snake monsters. The bottom half is human, the top half, their head, seems to have transformed into something that looks like a fly. Then they have all these like legs growing out of their back and the wings and stuff. Just a unique looking enemy, and then it kind of brought the thinking back of the eyes and stuff like that. It seems like they just believed having more eyes let them understand the Eldritch truth. Is really what I'm saying, and it just seems like maybe that's the way the game's gonna go. That's the way the game's gonna go. There's nothing I can change about that. I just really want to find it somewhere where like that's not how it works, but we'll see. And then after that, after I get to Byrgenwerth, I go back to here. It happens here in a second. The video's almost caught up to where I'm talking about. I go back to the Hunter's Dream because I have a bunch of souls and I didn't want to lose them running through Byrgenwerth. So back to Hunter's Dream, I check up on the puppet, and the puppet's sleeping, and I realized it when I went there this last time that when you walk up to it, the little bottom part where it shows subtitles pops up, but there's nothing there. And if you listen really closely, you can hear it breathing. which is weird. Like, this puppet is weird. This doll is very, very weird because, one, it sleeps, and two, it breathes. If it's a doll, why does it have to do either one of those things, right? It shouldn't have to sleep, nor should it have... I can get it, maybe it goes like unconscious and becomes a doll again. That makes sense, but she's actually sleeping because she's breathing. And I think that's kind of what those subtitles were trying to point at, is like, she's breathing, and she's actually sleeping. It's not that she's just passed out from doll form, and then she went back to doll form, and then you wake her back, and you know, she's actually sleeping. Which is just really weird. I don't know. That's something I can't explain, or I don't have anything to show explanation to that, or I don't even know where to begin with that. So the dream, the hunter's dream, Garmin, and the doll right now still very, very much elude me as to what the hell they are. But something I liked happened when I went back there. I was running around that area with the messenger log stump, and I found Garmin there. He was sleeping. So I was like, oh, snap, he's sleeping here. And you see it in the video. I actually like run, and then I see the subtitle thing pop up, the little black like foggy part at the bottom that pops up, and I stop and I was like, why is that popping up? And then I realized Garmin was there. And then you sit there, unlike the doll that just breathes. By the way, real quick, on the video right there, that reminds me of Mortal Kombat, where they do the movie where they go in the outworld. Like this, it reminded me of that. Anyways, the statue that turns into a reptile. Okay, just had to say that when I saw that. Going back. But yeah, so when you find him sleeping and then he's dreaming, and then he says a couple lines that are very, very interesting, and really you can only take one thing away from it. You can't, because everything else will probably be too much of an inference or speculation on it. But he says that it really seems like he knew Lawrence, and if he knew Lawrence, he knew Willem, because we saw in the flashback that Lawrence knew Willem. So more than likely he lived in the time of Lawrence and Willem. And that's really what you get from it. It sounds like he was still waiting for something to happen, because he says Lawrence is taking something, he's doing something for really taking too long to do something, and he's like, I'm getting too old for this. He basically pulls off like is it a bird off? A lethal weapon line. He's like, I'm too old for this shit. Like, that's basically what he says. And so, but really what you want to take from that is that he knew Lawrence and he knew Willem, so he was from that time period, more than likely. He knew those guys. Now, how old he was at that time, I want to say it was probably more of like Lawrence's age, just because he was a hunter, but you never know. He could have been a really old guy like Willem, but I don't think so. I think he was more like Lawrence, at least for now. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Like I said, he still very much eludes me, as well as the doll and the whole hunter's dream for right now. Maybe more will be, a little bit more will be revealed. I do believe, though, now that the hunter's dream is actual dream, and that's because of what happened in like episode 6 or 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever, where I went to the actual hunter's dream in Yharnam. So I do believe it is a dream. What's causing that? It's starting to lean that it seems like that Garmin wanted a great one to come and help him with something. I don't know what. For some reason he summoned, and that's why that umbilical cord's there. And he got it, and then what ended up happening is, was he trying to trick it, or was he trying to do something? But the ultimate end of it was that he ended up in his own hunter's dream, which is his little area, his little workshop, and that's kind of like his like requiem, his area of life. Like, that's what he wants to live in. And for some reason, like I said, this is the part that starts confusing me, is like, why do hunters go there? What's the whole point? What is he working for? Who is he working for? Or what is he doing? Because I think there's something weird about him, is all I'm gonna say. Because like, he does disappear, and it's weird that he disappears. His doll's all weird. All that's weird. So but whatever the doll is, it's very precious. And if it's in his dream, then there is something precious about it to him, is all I can say. But I don't know what that is yet. Also, the grave thing is there too, so that's also precious to him. All these things kind of just, all you can take away from it is that these things are precious to Garmin, because this is his dream. But why is he talking to the Great One, and what for? What are the reasonings behind it? What is he trying to accomplish? Again, he's talking to a different Great One than one probably Yharnam believes in, or the Healing Church believes in. Probably different than the one Byrgenwerth is trying to talk to. So these are all different ones. That's kind of what I get from it. So when I got to Byrgenwerth, there was one thing I noticed right off the bat. It seemed like a pretty small area. I thought Byrgenwerth was going to be more of like a huge city. You know, massive buildings, more like Yharnam, maybe just different looking. But when I got there, it's not that I was disappointed, but when I got there, it was just this thing called the Lunarium, and that was it. So I was like, maybe. And then I thought about it, I was like, maybe it's just a small portion of Byrgenwerth, or Byrgenwerth used to exist there. Maybe Byrgenwerth was part of grown out to the lake that's behind it, and it all collapsed. I don't know. Like, that's all speculation. I'm making shit up right there. So, but to me, because you do get an item, and I forget which one it is, but it says Byrgenwerth College on it. I think it's the key. I think the key says you get a Lunarium key, and I believe it says Byrgenwerth College. So that tells me that this is just like, like any city's college. It's just a college and not the whole city or the whole part of it. But you never know. But for all I know, is in the game, the area is relatively small, not a lot of enemies. And again, I think that's two reasons. One, because you just went through a whole huge area full of enemies. And two, because they want you to really be exploring the area more than fighting things. I think they want you to be looking around and trying to figure out what's going on, because this, again, is leading up to the midpoint and trying to get you to understand a little bit more about what's happening. So the Lunarium, I mentioned it. It's the building right there I was looking at. From far away, I thought it was a planetarium, which is not that far off what a Lunarium is. You can actually look up Lunarium, and its definition is just something that it depicts different stages of the moon. Again, the study of the moon, or whatever you want to call it. That's what a Lunarium is. So again, we're getting another moon reference. Moon and eyeballs all day. So definitely moon is, again, very important. For some reason, Byrgenwerth is studying the moon and its phases. School of Mensis seemed to be a school about the moon and its time. Its menses was Latin for month, which month comes from the different phases of the moon. So that's something to look at. Mens is also the word for menstruation, which is like part of the word for menstruation, right? So just keep that in mind, because remember, there is kind of like a fertility infant kind of thing storyline going through this. So School of Mensis is weirdly, I don't want to say it's the School of Menstruation, but think of like School of Mensis as being something darker than maybe Byrgenwerth, and maybe they were competing for knowledge, or maybe someone from Byrgenwerth took the knowledge that they learned from there and started the School of Mensis. Who knows? But they definitely are both studying the moon for one reason or another, and we get a little bit more into that. Now, like I said, it's called Lunarium. They're studying moon phases. We have many items that talk about the moon other than just that. You have the School Menses. You have something that talks about the cosmos or the sky, right? The choir note says the sky and the cosmos are one. Pale blood sky is mentioned in Yaragul. The cord of the eye, or the umbilical, with the 1/3 umbilical cord, talks about the moon and how it precipitates the hunter's dream, or at least in that one, it does. So it's just it's mentioned a lot, right? And it says the sky and the cosmos are as one, starting to lead to me believe that the cosmos is more or less the eldritch truth, the otherworldly knowledge. So it's saying that the sky and them and the great ones or whatnot are one, so they come from the sky, maybe, is another weird way of saying that. I'm not sure. That's, again, I think, a little more speculation than it is fact. But we get a message later on that kind of shows a little bit more of that. Let's see. So everything we know is that's sacred in Yharnam, and this is given by Alfred. Everything that's sacred in Yharnam is rooted in what we learn in Byrgenwerth, right? So whatever is learned in Byrgenwerth is sacred and used in Yharnam. And this was from Alfred Dialogue. So blood ministration, elder truth, the rituals with the chalices, the knowledge of the tombs, they all came from Byrgenwerth, and Yharnam is just benefiting from that knowledge. So basically, Byrgenwerth is doing all these studies and stuff, or it seems like that's what they're doing, and Yharnam is kind of just using it all, right? They're kind of just like, okay, that's cool, we'll use it, that's cool, oh, that's awesome. Maybe they weren't supposed to be using it, or maybe someone left Byrgenwerth to start the healing church for Yharnam. Not 100% sure exactly how that all began, but it doesn't seem like Byrgenwerth was doing this for Yharnam. And I think we get that here a little bit later also with some stuff that is mentioned about Willem and about pretenses and stuff like that. So we'll get to that in a minute, but that's kind of, it just seems like they weren't, like Byrgenwerth wasn't doing this for the Healing Church. The Healing Church learned about this stuff from Byrgenwerth, and something bad happened in Byrgenwerth and they had to shut it down. What that bad happening is, not 100% sure, something, but we know something bad happened, and they had to shut the doors and make sure no one else could get in there. And then they made the password the old adage, so that no one else would be able to get in there. Now, did the church do that because they didn't want anyone in there, and they didn't want them to figuring out the knowledge that they wanted by themselves for themselves? Because you do, here in a minute, find what I would consider a hunter in this area. And you're kind of like, what the hell are you doing here, bro? No one's supposed to be in here. I barely got in here, and I had to kill a boss to figure out the password to get in here. What are you doing in here? Very, very weird and unique. And he doesn't seem like he's a hunter like you. He seems more like a church hunter, or he actually, well, he looked like, I call him the scholar enemy, or the scholar hunter. But to me, I don't think he's of Byrgenwerth, because I don't think Byrgenwerth had hunters. But I know the church did. So he could definitely be a church hunter, and they kind of send people in here maybe to figure out stuff, and then use that stuff to do things in their little area. The only thing that kind of negates that is, like, this area is so effed right now. Like, it's not like the church has like people running around and everything's going smoothly. And the shit's going bad, like real bad. So I didn't know if he didn't get the memo. Maybe he's dead already. He's an undead guy. Who knows? The other thing that's weird about that hunter is that, or every hunter in this game, seems to attack you, like, immediately. They don't even get you a chance. They don't talk to you. There's very few that you actually can talk to and get to your side. And it's just, and one of them is Eileen the Crow, and we found her at the very, very beginning of the game. She's the one with the Plague Doctor mask on, and she is a hunter of hunters, but she's one of the ones that don't hunt you. You think the hunter of hunter would hunt you. But she's one of the few that don't, and you're getting hunted, and all these other hunters are hunting you. So it's very, very weird. Maybe it's because you're foreign or whatnot, but not 100% sure. The hunters are another thing that eludes me in this game. Is like, who are they and what exactly are they used for? There seems to be a bunch of different types, just as in there's a bunch of different great ones. So maybe there's something to tie into that, or not. Not 100% sure. Just something, again, to keep in the back of our mind and try to figure out exactly what your purpose is, or why there are hunters to begin with. Maybe each sect, or maybe each version of the Great One uses hunters differently. The Healing Church has its own hunters. Maybe Byrgenwerth has its own hunters. If you're a hunter for Germán and whatever his ideas are and his people, so maybe you're kind of summoned by these Great Ones to do their deeds for them, and who knows, right? So again, making shit up, but I'm trying to make sense of things that are going on. The other thing is, with all this stuff, Yharnam has a lot of characters that have their eyes covered, and their statues don't show their eyes. Why? What's with the eyes stuff? We know that it seems like someone is trying to use these eyes, and again, in a minute, we kind of see someone that talks about it very deeply. Willem, you bastard. So he seems to really want eyes, but are eyes considered holy in Yharnam? Is that why they cover them up? Because a lot of places in our real world, if holy things are covered up, right? Nuns are covered up, things that are considered holy don't show skin. They cover those areas up. So when you cover something up, is it considered holy? Or eyes considered holy in Yharnam is what I'm getting at. Is that why they're covered? Or that might not be the reason, or is it because you don't, the other thing behind that is you don't see regular civilians cover their eyes up, right? Just like regular civilians in our world right now, they don't cover everything up, consider everything holy. You only see certain parts or certain people that do that. And in this game, it seems like hunters are one of them, except you're a hunter. But Germán, his eyes are covered. Papa Gas, his eyes are covered. Vicar, Amelia's eyes are covered. Cleric Beast's eyes are covered. All the statues around the place, eyes are covered. The people's eyes in Hemwick are all gone. The horses, even the dead horses' eyes are gone. I think if I remember right, it looked like their eyes were all gone. So those are just like weird things to do with this eye thing. Because like again, I'm keeping my eye out for the eye stuff in this game and the moon stuff, because they seem like they might explain the most of what's going on. So someone wants these eyeballs. And again, it seems like all I can conclude is like eyes in this game just seem like they have special powers. For some reason or another, they want you to think that they have special powers. I really hope like there's another explanation to that, but there you go. Right there, before I go too far, you saw that I call it the Celestial Worm. You saw how he disappeared. he kind of just like vanished into like a black hole. It would be or like a hole in the universe, or a hole like in time and space, or something like that. If you want to get super fancy with it, he just dies differently, and that's kind of something I'm gonna talk about later. But for right now, just remember that's the way that looks. So onto what I call the insight horrors, which are those things that remind me of the mind flayers. You fight one here. You fought one earlier in the cathedral. I think it was in the cathedral wards, like down in the bottom areas of it. They basically they do two moves really. They I think they have a physical attack, but they also stun you, and then they try to suck insight from you. The biggest, like, the thing I take away from them is that they're just not human looking. They don't look human. They look something else. They have like a tentacle head, which you see tentacles kind of on the statues and stuff around the place. Just very, very, very weird. And why do they want insight? What is their purpose? Is really what are they sent from a great one? Is there something about them? Like who? Like they're kind of just thrown in, and it's kind of just weird. But the one thing I do know is that they just don't feel human to me. They feel like maybe they're part of a different era, kind of like the Shadows of Yharnam, or they're part of a different existence plane. Maybe, who knows? The way this game's going right now, it seems like there's going to be like a planes of existence kind of thing going on. And then again, we kind of hear about that here in a second. I promise we're going to get to all that. You saw me looking at the Great One's wisdom, but right before that, we met the Celestial Worm. He's another weird looking enemy. They're weird. Like, they are really weird. Very, again, not fitting of this game so far, and pretty much kind of like those blue mushroom guys. They just don't fit. I call him the Celestial Worm because of that way he dies. He just kind of disappears, and then his attack, where he shoots fireballs at you, he's not conjuring it up with like a staff or a stone, or it's not coming out of his mouth. If you watch closely, it's actually coming. He's opening up another portal from somewhere. It looks like space and time, and because if you really look at the portal, it looks like stars are in the background and stuff, and he's shooting them out of that portal. So it's not like he's getting it from anything else. On screen right now, I'm looking at these look like fetuses. If you ever played the game PT, or that game on PS4, the free game PT, that's kind of what those look like. They look like fetuses. I didn't really have much to talk about that, except that's what they are. And this game has that insight of infants and things like that. Maybe this kind of explains why the first infants always die, because Byrgenwerth always takes them and studies them. Who knows? But those are there. I didn't have much to say. The other thing about the Celestial Worm is I've talked about flowers previous episodes, and this one seemed to have one on its mouth, and it looked like a lily. And lilies are used for healing properties, but then again, I don't really know if that's what it was. I didn't get a very, very good look at it. It just kind of looked like a lily to me. And lilies also are something about beauty and virginity. So those are all things, especially white lilies, I believe, are for that. But like I said, lilies are also a thing of healing properties. Just something I think they may have put in there just for symbolism, just for something to tie into something else, but nothing of like deep meaning or anything like that. But you see a lot of these kind of things that I'm looking up and I'm finding out all kind of have the same thing. They all deal with healing, or something to do with babies or something like that. It's just something interesting. And like I said, when it dies, it disappears into what I would consider the cosmos, because that's something that they use all the time in this game, that word. So that's what I'm going to call it from now on. No universe or whatever. It's just called cosmos, and you can think of cosmos as a different plane of existence, not necessarily space, not necessarily something like that. It could be just a different plane. And I use the word the plane because someone else uses it right here in a second. So I'm starting to think the game is about different dimensions or different planes. I just said I wasn't going to use the word other than different planes, and great ones are from that plane. Maybe the people of this plane are using dreams to connect their dimensions to create something in the real world. It's hard to tell. A lot of this is still speculation. So what I'm thinking is that there's different planes of existence, but to connect to them, you need to dream. And when to dream, so they got to get dreaming first. And once they dream, they're able to get these connection to these other planes. But there's still a real world out there. So right now, what happened at the beginning of the game is we said we got blood ministration, right? Which could be true, but it also may have been something that knocked us out or something, so that we began to dream. And then once we began to dream, we can enter these other worlds using insight, and then insight is what ultimately gets you to these other planes of existence, and in these planes of existence is the real truth, the eldritch truth, which is what they want to find. Pure speculation. throwing that shit straight up out of my mouth. It's coming out of my ass. It's just making up shit. But it makes sense a little bit. I think there's been stories and things like that thrown out there that kind of ties things in like that. You can think of Inception in a weird way. It's kind of like that. Just kind of pure speculation. I have nothing really to tie any of that together. Maybe by the end of the game I can make sense of everything. We found the Great One's wisdom just a minute ago. It's Great One's described as gods in that statement. It says we are, and then Willem says something very interesting. He says we are thinking on the basis of planes. What we need are more eyes. So Willem states. He states that we need more eyes, like straight up. So is he the one gathering all the eyes? And what is he doing? Is he gathering eyes in the real world? Which that doesn't seem like that's a good thing to do. Or is he gathering these eyes for the dream world so that he can pierce the veil of the dream and then see into these other existences? He states that he fears the old blood. He states that multiple times. So if he's stating that, is it because he's scared and he's scared of it because he doesn't understand it? So he wants to understand it, but to understand it, he needs more eyes. That's kind of what I'm getting from what he's saying. It's kind of weird, and I might be like super off base, but like I said, still think there's multiple great ones, or maybe even multiple plane of existences, or just multiple great ones in essence. And they can grant their followers the eldritch truth, but they do it in different ways, and not every way is necessarily the right way or a good way. And then their followers want to understand this truth. So is part of understanding the truth is getting an infant, that's part great one, part human, and that kind of melds the two existences together, so they understand like what is the meaning behind that. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards. But again, I'm not sure to fit that into the dream thing that I just made and how all this goes together. Again, like I'm off base, I'm off speculation, just as speculation, but it's just making me my cogs in my head turn, and trying to figure out what's going on. But Byrgenwerth was different, but it ended up in the same way. That Byrgenwerth really was trying to understand all of what's going on instead of using it. And I believe like the Healing Church is trying to use it, right? And each great one seems to have maybe a different motive going on. And they seem to be gods because the one that can speak, that we found so far is Uedon, but the other ones just have an inhuman voice. So if you start hearing like an inhuman voice and stuff like that, you start freaking out and maybe even going mad yourself. Just kind of a thing about that great one wisdom that we found. Scholar fight we talked about, just kind of weird that he was here, who the hell he was. We picked up the student uniform. The biggest thing on there says the focus not on knowledge or thought, but on pure pretension, would surely bring Master Willem to despair, if only he knew. So Master Wilhelm was wanting to do things. I don't know if I can say he wanted to do them the right way, but he definitely wanted to understand what he was finding in the tombs. Like maybe he didn't know what it was, so he needed to find a way. But maybe during that wanting to find out what it was, he somehow got penetrated. He got penetrated by a great one, and he started doing things off base of what he really was ultimately trying to do. So maybe he had good intentions, but he didn't necessarily do it the right way. But in the next part it says he didn't know that maybe other people had different pretensions. In other words, they had different idea, and pretension is like they thought themselves better than everyone. But that necessarily doesn't mean they are, right? If you're pretentious, that's what that is. They had different motives, something else. So he didn't know that going on. And that's why I think if only he knew was thrown in there to show that he didn't know that. What it's basically breaking down to me is that I think the game is trying to go that there were two forces at one point. There was Byrgenwerth, and then there was the church, right? And the Church of Healing. And I'm thinking they're kind of going through a thing called science, like science versus church, right? Science versus religion. Science wants to gain knowledge and know what it's coming from and how it's working and all that stuff. But the church wants to use it to gain power and infamy over people. At the same time, both of them did it wrong. So they end up both messing things up, and then or their acts can both be seen as evil because they were competing maybe against each other, or they didn't know like Willem didn't seem like he knew. So what he wanted to do may have been known by the church because they knew, but the church wanted ulterior motives for what they found in the tombs. Kind of seems a little legit there. Not 100% sure, but that kind of seems like a little bit of a thing that they want to try to portray in here, is that you got this healing church and you got this scholarship or this college, and that they're both kind of competing against each other. So you see that one message said the spider hides all manner of rituals, certain to reveal nothing, for true enlightenment need not be shared. It kind of reminds you of that first message that you saw a while back, and I think that's the point of this message, is to show you I'll show you this now on the video right now. Just look at what I'm kind of looking at and just keep that in mind. The biggest thing is what his staff has on it and what's growing on the back of his neck. But anyways, back to, yeah, so there's rituals that are being hidden by a spider, like straight up tells you that. And then true enlightenment need not to be shared. So this spider is hiding the truth or knowledge, and it doesn't want to share it. What this knowledge is, or is it the elder truth, is still unknown. But it's hiding these rituals that may lead to it or not. It's just hiding stuff, and what that is we just need to figure it out. When the red moon hangs low, the line between man and beast is blurred, and when the great ones descend, a womb will be blessed with child. It just explains the kind of why they're studying the moon phases, right? What's going on and why they need to know about it. If they can know when a great one descends, they may now know how to be ready for one, whether it's good or bad. Do they want one to know when it's descending and when it's going to have a child, or do they want to know when it's going to have a child so they can hunt it for other purposes? It could be both. Maybe one side wanted to do it for one way. Byrgenwerth was like, no, we can't let that happen. Church was like, yes, we can, because we need the power. I don't know. It's speculation, but definitely something to keep also, again, in the back of mind. A lot of stuff that we find here is stuff we want to just keep in the back of our mind, because we're going to need it. So there are 3 items we found there: the pearl slug, the phantasm shell, and the Lunarium key. I'm not going to talk about them in this episode. I'll talk about them next episode, and there's a reason for that. But right now we're going to talk about Master Willem, and we know it's Willem from the flashback. He has a couple things on him. He has fungus on him, and he's holding that cane. He points towards the water when you walk up to him, and you get some insight. The cane on the end looks like it has a plant on it, and then the plant seems to be what I would consider a snowberry. Again, I don't know for sure if it is or not, but a snowberry is found to have medicinal purposes. What plant doesn't have medicinal purposes is what I'm kind of concluding from here, but it also has the medicinal purpose to soothe the eyes when crushed up. Might be it, might not be it, who knows. And then he has a fungus growing on his back. Fungus in ancient times was known to be something of divinity, something to show infinite life. Immortality is the word I'm looking for, and that this fungus could just maybe be growing at him because he's too old. So it might have that connection, it might not. Again, fungus is also parasitic. It's tied with parasites. So again, think of like Last of Us. So those things kind of play. But what I really want to say is that we may need other things to tell his real motives, but I believe he is trying to lead us to the truth of things. But to do that, we need to kill whatever is in the lake, which is blocking us from seeing it, because obviously he's leading us to a boss. And the rune is kind of hitting to that, the lake runes. It's not water itself which is blocking sleep, but whatever is in the water. However, doing so will cause the omen of the Eldritch Truth to occur. We know this omen to being tied in with the moon phases from the messages earlier, which means by going forward, we are also going to start the clock on an infant great one being born. So if we defeat whatever is in the lake, we should see a red moon. So that's kind of what I think he's leading towards us doing. But with that, guys, I'm going to head on out of here. We'll talk about those other 3 items next time. So peace out. Later.